Okay, you ready?
I'm ready to go. You ready?
You are listening to the Music Ed Mentor podcast, where we teach music educators how to build, manage, and grow thriving school music programs and have long and happy careers. I am your host, Elisa Jansen-Jones, and we are recording this podcast live from TMEA in beautiful San Antonio, Texas. We've kind of taken over the Hilgi Music Center booth. So if you are in or around San Antonio, check out Hilgi Music for all your band and orchestra needs, as well as your Lulubelle's screen printing. They were a little bit shocked when I walked in and just dominated the booth, but they are being so gracious and letting us record. This episode also is happening in part with Romeo Music, who has loaned us their microphones. They are kind of your leaders in your audio technology needs, so check out Romeo Music as well. This episode is a little bit different, obviously, from our normal format because we are recording live, and this will come to you highly unedited. And I have brought in the marvelous John Mlynczak. Did I say it right? I totally said it right.
Yeah.
Okay, close.
Mlynczak, whatever.
Mlynczak. Depends on if you're doing it with the proper Polish vernacular.
Polish.
Yeah. There you go. It's a little more guttural than I'm used to, being just, Jansen. I mean, whatever. Anyway, so we're going to kind of flip this interview. So I'm going to turn it over to John as the host.
Excellent. Well, I'm so honored to be on your podcast and taking over your podcast for the next 20 minutes. It is now the Mlynczak Music Ed Mentor podcast, and I get to interview you as a guest, which is very exciting. I have lots of things to ask, and I have a million questions I want to know. However, we only have a few minutes here. So I think where I want to start is you're a music teacher, private lesson teacher, and at some point it became clear that professional development was calling into passion. Was there a moment that happened? Was that something that evolved as teaching? How did that become your calling?
So let's see. I think it all started by recognizing my own failures as a music teacher and realizing that I was woefully unprepared when I thought I was completely prepared to be a music teacher. I had grown up in a musical family, and I had worked in a music store, and I had a wonderful education through two fine universities. I thought, I am completely prepared to be the very best music teacher in the entire universe, and I acknowledge I was woefully unprepared. So I kind of figured out where I was most unprepared.
Where was that?
It was in all the let's call them the business skills of running your program. I didn't know how. I knew how to create a spreadsheet and use it. I knew how to collect data and leverage that. But as far as all of the, advocacy and marketing, which is really what we do, negotiating, financial management, grant writing, all these things that I just did not feel entirely prepared for. I'd never taken a class in classroom management. I had rehearsal skills out the wazoo, but so there are all these things, and then nobody talks about how to create a lifestyle so that you don't want to run out of your classroom screaming all the time.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. So let me break it down. I heard three things, right?
Okay, go.
All teachers experience this, right? First is we don't realize when we get into the classroom the first time that how much we have to advocate for music ed internally and externally to our school, both for financial resources, for support, for recognition, and in the community of the school. So that was the first piece you talked about.
Right.
The second was classroom management. Obviously in college we learn to be music educators, but we're conducting classes, we're conducting for our peers, and we're student teaching in some of the finest schools around, where the kids have the fear of death as your cooperating teacher. They will behave for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you get your own class, and you're like, oh wow, there's a lot going on. So the classroom management piece, right? And then you talked about like work-life balance and how stressful it gets in this. And I think that's probably the same order that most music teachers feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So are those the sort of the three areas in the order in which you felt it coming on as a teacher?
I'm not sure I could have delineated it in such a robust way as you just did. I just saw it as
you said.
Well, that's because I've had years to analyze it and think about it and channel these things and put really specific words onto it. So I did know that I wanted to get a master's degree, but I didn't know what I wanted it in, whether it was education or music, I really was so averse, and this is embarrassing for me to say, I didn't want to do research. I didn't want to do theory. I wanted actionable, practical. I wanted boots on the ground, useful information, and I wasn't sure that a master's degree in music education or music or even education was going to give me that because of the state of academia. Forgive me, my dear professors, I love you. I've learned my lessons since then, and I'm now working on a doctorate degree. But again, with the focus on boots on the ground, how do we change the system, not just talk about the system, not just analyze the system, but actually...
Somewhere in your undergrad experience that maybe, because you talked about education a lot, and then you get into the classroom and you're like, oh my God, there's all this stuff I didn't prepare for, and that might have skewed your idea of what academia is for a minute? I
think so. I mean, I look at my own college professors, amazing people, total of 3 years in the classroom. How could they teach me how to run a classroom if they hadn't done it? How could they teach me how to build a program? I'm sorry. I love you all. I love all music educators. I'm just acknowledging that there are some inherent failures, and that's due to the system. We could really dial into that, but
as a teacher, after you taught for a little while and then went back for a master's, was it different?
Yeah, because I went for an MBA. Because I didn't go into education, or I looked at a Master of Business Administration degree because I knew when I came back into the classroom that would fill a lot of those holes in the skill set that I didn't have. And I thought, okay, so when I come back with a master's in business, I still have immense musical teaching skills as a music teacher, but now I had all that other stuff I was missing. And so then I got thinking, and then I actually started doing business consulting as a business strategist. And I was helping all of these businesses, and primarily because my children were still small and at home and I could work from home and remotely. But then I thought, I'm not passionate about helping a new app developer figure out their next content strategy. I'm not passionate about, I'm slightly passionate about the new tap room that wants to open in downtown Grand Junction. But I really wanted to help the people that I was passionate about, and that was music education. And so I didn't look at it as a business where I was going to make any money, but it was a business where I could make a difference.
Right. A lot of people say to, wait, I hear this a lot from college. I was told, wait before you do your master's, don't do a master's on undergrad, get some experience, because then when you go back into higher ed, you have experiences to draw from that you can apply to whatever learning, whether it's an MBA or music or any other education or anything else. Did you feel that you were able to take your experiences from the classroom, that your MBA was more valuable because you had some classroom experience at that time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had experience in music retail, but also in music education and in the nonprofit sector as well, where there's a high demand and necessity for better management and better practices as well. We could do a whole episode on nonprofit management, I think.
Oh, yes,
there's a lot there.
So, back to professional development for music teachers, because of course that's what you focus on a lot as a clinician, of course the International Music Ed Conference, and of course this podcast of professional development pathways and the guests you bring on and the focused areas you bring to your listeners. So how have these experiences driven the way you want to offer professional development with your various, can I call them brands, like Lisa the Clinician, Lisa the International Music Ed, so that's your three areas.
You can call them brands, sure.
So those three brands, those three areas of what you do, they all are different, maybe vehicles or channels for you to deliver professional development, either in person or in a clinic, whether it's in person in the district or through your podcast or by hosting this amazing international online summit where you bring in people from all over the world. How have your what would you say that you're doing different or unique or just effectively to bring the professional development that you wish you had before you went to the classroom?
I think I have a good filter. Honestly, a lot of the podcasts, and our regular listeners know this, I bring on the guests that I want to learn from, personally, as an experienced K-8 classroom teacher. But I really wanted to focus on, and you're going to hear this recurring theme, I want it to be relevant, I want it to be practical, I want it to be actionable, and I want it to be accessible, because I've wasted too many times in too many conference sessions where I've learned nothing. Or I've learned nothing that I could apply in the classroom to actually affect positive student learning. And there's not a great way for us at this point to actually even track that. Going to your session on Note Flight, let's say, I'm going to learn some great information. You're going to give me some awesome ideas, but where do I go from there? Like, what are my next steps? And if you, Note Flight, you should go. But the point is you have that capability of pointing them to continued learning, but a lot of sessions don't offer that. And so, and then some, and that's talking about somebody who's a fantastic presenter, who has wonderful content, who's been in the classroom. Now, what about somebody who has never been in the classroom, is presenting something that's completely theoretical, or is now completely out of touch because they've been in the industry sector for so long?
You know what you're hitting on from someone here who goes to a lot of conferences? I mean, we're all doing the circuit. This is my 8th year going to 10 conferences in 2 months, and it's just, been to a lot of them. And what you're hitting on is when we go to sessions as teachers, we don't necessarily know who's giving the information. We don't know how to qualify the source. And in research, as you know, as a researcher now, someone that's invested in research and a doctorate, information is only as good as the quality of the source. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about, and I've seen presenters do like, okay, they'll say something confidently, and people will write it down. But how do they know that? Did they do it? Did they see that change a child's life? Does that lesson work effectively for them every day? Or are they? So how do we as teachers go to a conference or go online and qualify the quality of our professional development?
We can't. I mean, until we're there and actually doing it, right? And some conferences are trying to provide some curation of the presenters to ensure that
you just go to a bunch and hope you get something that you can use.
Well, no, like the Modern Band Summit. Yeah. Right? So I applied for that. They said, have you presented with us before? I said no, even though I'm an experienced presenter. So I had to submit a video of me presenting. And so we're kind of getting there, but then we're looking at this massive process of resources and filtration. So it's tricky.
How does your online summit handle it? What do you look for when you pick your presenters?
I just take everybody named John.
Well, obviously.
So part of it is when I started the summit, it was just me and podcast guests, people that I had already talked to that I knew had great content that could provide a lot of that supplemental learning after the session, a lot of that support that is so necessary for you to actually get that concept learned to the point where it now affects your students' learning and their improvement in music. Because that's the goal.
So
that's the goal.
Invite only the first year.
Oh, right. So totally invite only, and then I do accept. I don't ask for a teaching video, but I provide training. So in a couple weeks, all of our presenters for 2020 are going to log in on a webinar, and I'm going to teach them how to present in an online space so that we have kind of a consistency of look and feel, because not everybody has your natural talent for it, John. So some people, it's a new.
Online for 5 years, and it's hard.
It's hard because you don't see the faces of the people. You don't hear their reactions. You can read it in the chat window, but I feed off the audience when I'm presenting in person. So you have to be really creative in some of the methods that you use when presenting a webinar, so that you are driving that engagement, so that you are collecting some kind of feedback. So I train my presenters. They're educators, so I know that they're learners too.
Well, I can say in your environment, the online environment, people should not be presenting sessions for the first time. You need to be presenting sessions that you've done in groups so many times, so you know where the laughs are going to happen, you know where the impact points are, and you can have that experience so that even if you can't see or hear the audience you're talking to, you know where the impact is going to be because you've done it enough, and you just have to trust that the people on the other side are smiling.
That would be ideal too, but I do see this as a great opportunity for first-time presenters because they get the kind of support that I can give them.
Right.
Because they now belong to this community of conference presenters.
You have no practice for you.
I really do see it as we're a community, we're music teachers helping music teachers. We're not a big, high-paid corporation that has, a purpose that they want to sell to you. I definitely want to sell to you, you guys. I want to sell professional development to you. But I'm saying there's not like a...
Can we dive on that?
Don't.
Going?
No,
I want to dive on the idea of sell, because I believe everyone's trying to sell something.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Right?
Right, but we have a hard time with that as music teachers.
But I'm not talking about products or money, right? I mean, even for a teacher, Dan Pink is one of To Sell is Human is a book that every teacher should read. Because the idea is that teachers, we're selling ideas.
It's true.
Right? Like we have to sell students on the idea that if they go home and play something over and over and over again with them, ticky box, that they will be able to do something that they cannot do now, and that's.
Some of us call that a metronome, but
I'm
go
a
on.
trumpet player. I don't need that. I just saw a march tune at the factory and had a great time. It's all fun. No, but I think we're all trying to sell something, and I wonder but there's a line of who you're getting at is the corporation comes on. It's are they just saying all this because they want me to buy my product? And where does that line fall? And I have lots of ideas on this because I know a lot of people in the industry that do product pitches and also people that do relevant educational sessions that show off their product. And so how do you curate them? How do you know if someone comes and says, hey, we want to do all these sessions? How do you determine, is it a veiled product sales pitch, or is it completely relevant that something that's possible using your product would be applicable in other ways? Mm-hmm. How do you figure that out?
I don't know that I have to. I mean, and you and I have talked about this, so this is a conversation that we've already had about if you're providing, super relevant educational content by showing what your product can do, I don't know why we would negate that by calling it highly promotional.
Exactly. But then some conferences will say, oh, you're a corporation. Nope, this is corporate spotlight, charge and all of this. And so we try to walk it's not even a fine line. We try to make sure, we're teaching music composition, music creation.
Right.
We'd love you to do it with Noteflight, but you know what? There's a lot of notation softwares out there, and they all put notes, and they all play back. So at the end of the day.
But what you're doing is you are demonstrating the practical classroom application of what happens to be your product. If Yamaha were to teach a beginning flute session with one of their amazing flute professionals, then that's educational, that's not promotional. But if you're using it as a platform for an advertisement, that's different. Right. So what I've tried to push corporations to do is do a session that showcases your product, because as music teachers, we want to know the features of your product. We want to know what it does, and we want to know the application. So this year you'll actually see some that are, here's the product demo, that's session 1, and session 2 is, here's how to use it in your classroom to improve your student learning music. And that's where everything really, let's be realistic about this. Everything that you should be learning should be improving your students' learning. Everything that you are learning as a professional should improve your students' learning.
It's about the kids? It's students?
Yes. I mean,
no, I'm serious.
No, there's stuff.
Say it over and over.
No, it is about the kids. And if you can learn, the things that I teach that are off the podium skills, I like to call them. If you can learn grant writing, that means that you can now apply for grants, which means you get funding, which improves student learning. Yeah. If you can manage your lifestyle by actually liberating yourself from the guilt of taking care of yourself, then you're going to be a better teacher, which in the end affects student learning. So everything that you should be learning, even these off the podium skills, should in the end, idealistically, be improving student learning. And if it happens to improve your confidence and your ability to teach and your lowered stress level because you now know how to manage a classroom of kindergartners when somebody gets a bloody nose, it happens, people. It happens. So if you can improve your life, you can now be a better functioning teacher and in the end have a longer and happier career.
So for the folks listening, I want to know a lot of topics. I'm jumping all over. This is you talk about advocacy, right? And you've seen advocacy at multiple levels now. And I know that NAM advocates in certain ways, and NAFME advocates, and state organizations advocate, and nonprofits advocate, and for students and for teachers, we advocate sometimes out of love and sometimes out of necessity. And how do you see all the different types of advocacy, and who do you think is effective, more effective, or what can we do to improve overall?
Advocacy is a fancy word that we shouldn't use anymore. It's public relations, it's sales, but most of all, advocacy is education. It is educating the decision makers about the importance of what we do. And we need to do that from the student perspective. The truest form of advocacy is when we can show and demonstrate the difference that we're making for our students in a way that makes it so face value, so relevant, that they can't not support music education.
Advocacy is education.
Advocacy is education. We feel like if we send that positive email from a parent to our principal that we're being prideful, that we're being selfish, that we're taking something away from the students by tooting our own horn. But that is an incredibly powerful form of advocacy by demonstrating the needs that you are fulfilling in the community from the mouth of people who are directly being affected by your teaching. And that's not a negative thing, that's a positive.
We're just on that too, right? So the time that principal will never know that email was sent unless you send it. And
yeah.
You sort of, as a teacher, I think we have to, because when the principal sees us value in the program, then resources come, and then you have more resources to be a better educator for the students.
Exactly, and I feel like we can almost shy away from being like, rah, 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 support music education. Well, because when we say that to people outside of music education, they might feel like we are advocating purely for our own paycheck. And so we have to instead build up an army of people who understand the importance of what we're doing, who can break through that perception. We shouldn't be our biggest advocates. We should be educating others to be our biggest advocates for us.
I think we are also saying, and I just want to be trying to be more clear, is that advocacy is something that never stops. If you're a teacher and you have your programs are full, and you say, okay, I don't have to advocate because my programs are full. It's just not true. There's still 80% of the school that's.
So there's actually a great resource on how to advocate, because it's not going to your state legislature, it's not waiting till your school board wants to cut your program. Those are last-ditch efforts. We really should be looking at it like every bit of advocacy that we do is filling up our advocacy bank account, right? And so when we do need to pull that stuff out, it's already there. And there's a great article in School Band and Orchestra magazine in the January issue of this year, January 2020, that's on how to advocate for your music program. It's really well written. School Band and Orchestra magazine.
No, that's good.
Yeah, I wrote it.
No,
I mean, but honestly, I don't get a lot of feedback on the podcast, but when I do, I know it's highly relevant. I don't get a lot of feedback on the articles that I write, but when I do, I know it's highly relevant.
Exactly.
And that's one that I've gotten multiple pieces of feedback on.
So we could talk for hours. I want to give you a chance to two more questions.
Okay.
I guess the first is talk to a college senior who's going into their music ed major, that's going into their first job next year. Tell them what you wish you were told.
That list is way too long. I will say, design your life. Know how you want to live and prioritize your life accordingly. Build up a community of support around you. Don't go it alone. You have a monstrous ego. You obviously should have a monstrous ego, but don't let your ego get in the way of you outreaching for help, because isolation is one of the largest factors when it comes to teacher burnout, especially new teachers. So reach out to not just other music teachers in your area, but reach out to the other teachers in your school. Reach out to people online. Build this community of support and mentors that you can reach out to. And I speak for everybody who's written a blog post or recorded a podcast episode or done a Facebook live stream or has a YouTube training video. We are all here as resources for you. We're not in this to make $1 million because none of us are, you guys. We are strictly here to help support other music educators so that you can have exactly what I said at the beginning, a thriving school music program and a long and happy career. So build up that network of people around you and manage your lifestyle. You can. You get to decide your life. No one else can.
It's fantastic. I love everything you said. The real two standouts are the isolation. Usually you're the only music teacher in a school you don't have. And just realizing that most of the issues we experience as teachers, we think are music teacher issues. We know how to teach music. We know music. It's been beaten into us. Classroom management, burnout, advocating for resources. Every teacher in the school struggles with that in some way. So the other teachers can be part of that. You're not isolated in those areas, and building those coalitions and relationships are important.
Right.
And you also mentioned that we're not making money. I mean, it's interesting. We talk about corporations, but any one of us, great salespeople, marketing folks, and software developers in the music space, we could build and be an insurance for healthcare or financial products and be making tenfold what we're doing now with the same skill sets. But we're doing it because we all love music, and I can say that we're surrounded by literally thousands of people right now. And there's probably I think there's 1 million products on this floor. I think there probably is.
At least, yeah.
Everyone here that we can see right now is here because they love music and music changes lives.
I went to dinner with 2 people from Yamaha. You might have heard of Yamaha. It's a big corporation.
Yeah, they make motorcycles
and when exactly. And when I asked them, okay, you are Yamaha, you are the Yamaha Education Marketing Division. And I said, what is Yamaha's goal? And they said, we want to use our resources to support music educators where they need support. They did not say, we want to sell more Yamaha books. We want to sell more Yamaha instruments. They said, we want to use the vast resources that we have to support music educators. That is their mission.
And that's NAMM. I mean, I can tell you from what NAMM does and what the industry does, that's every conversation that we have. I mean, really.
It's the National Association of Music Merchants, by the way.
They listen to all your podcasts. They know.
I mean, ideally they listen to all the podcasts, but Hill G Music's going to send this one out to their crew, so
of course.
Hopefully that will
so
grow.
One more last question. I guess I just want to give you a chance. If you had one more open minute to be a guest on your own podcast, is there anything you're dying to share, or dying to let people know about you that you don't get a chance to as the host? This is your forum. This is it. This is your moment.
What can I say?
One shot.
Something I want them. Wow. Okay.
See her face.
Something
this weird smile because I was thinking of something, but she's wondering if she should actually say it. That's what that smile is.
Okay. I don't know what people perceive about me. Everybody gets feedback on themselves, and I realize that some people see me as, a highly progressive, entrepreneurial, amazing music teacher, and I am all of those things. And I'm adorable, and I'm gorgeous, and I tell you this because I'm also extremely self-conscious. I am an introvert, and I am willing to do all of this for you. That's all.
It's been a true honor to take over the Music Ed podcast. So I will now hand it back to you. You are now the host again.
Thank you.
Absolve myself of these duties. Do you want to close this out?
Yeah, so thank you for listening to this episode. We know how much your time is valuable. I know there are 100,000 other things you could be listening to. You could be listening to Pitbull right now, you guys, or Holst, I don't know, Billie Eilish? Anyway, but you're listening to this, and We just appreciate your time. Please provide feedback, give us a 5-star rating, subscribe, and share this with your like-minded music educators, because we are a community of music educators. So keep that in mind. Don't be isolated. Reach out and control your own life and keep teaching on.